God of War is a series filled with deep storytelling, epic fights, and quick time events that either is a badass moment or shows a woman who couldn't afford a shirt. Today, I want to talk about the God of War game with all of these elements: deep storytelling, conflicts, themes that tie into character motivations, and of course, heartbreak. No, I'm not talking about God of War 2018, Ragnarok, Valhalla, or any of the sequel God of War games. I'm talking about God of War Chains of Olympus.
You again. The walls of Tartarus would not hold Atlas, and they would not hold me either. Ghost Sparta. Slave to the Olympians. I am a slave to no one.
Your suffering will never end. Ghost of Sparta.
God of War Chains of Olympus is one of the most underrated God of War games out there because of its release on the original PSP. It had a lot of technical limitations. Kratos' blades looked like small knives compared to his body, and some shots and gameplay itself seemed a little slow down. However, it is a solid God of War game that has stood the test of time through all of these years. However, I don't see many people talking about how deep its story really goes concerning its characters: Kratos, Persephone, Calliope, and Atlas. All of these characters have connections with one another, and it really boosts the story to a level that is really hard to understand, which I'm going to break down for you. When it comes to Kratos and Persephone, both of them are very similar concerning their stories. Kratos willingly became a slave to the gods, moving conflict to conflict, doing their bidding, all with the hope that someday the gods will remove his memories because he was tricked into killing his family, thus putting him in a life of servitude. Persephone, on the other hand, had to marry Hades and serve the gods as the overwatcher of the underworld.
Yet they do not give me what I ask. I grow weary of their demands.
The gods on Olympus failed me too, Kratos. I was betrayed by Zeus and tricked by my husband Hades. Now I am to stay in the underworld as queen of the dead, to serve the fallen and care for them as my own children. Do you think it was my choice to wed a man I did not love? Live a life I did not choose? I was betrayed by the very gods that once saw me as their own, but no more. Once the pillar is destroyed, the world will revert into chaos.
Both Kratos and Persephone are not free. Persephone was forced to marry Hades. She said it wasn't her choice. Kratos was forced to kill his family, and clearly that wasn't his choice. At this point in the series, there hasn't been a character, let alone a villain, that relates to Kratos on such a fundamental level. At the start of the scene, she even tries to relate to him for a moment. I'll talk more about Kratos and Persephone later, but we can't forget about the other two characters that really go into the themes of this story, which is slavery. Atlas was banished to the underworld by Zeus, while Calliope was sent here because of Kratos. This puts Calliope and Atlas in the same boat as well. If you really want to think about it, all four of them are down here against their will. Kratos was sent here by the gods, Persephone forced to live here even though she clearly does not want to, Atlas and Calliope of course are not here against their will. All four of these characters had their freedoms snatched away by means outside of their control. The story strings and pulls these characters together, all here under different circumstances, but in the same way, the same circumstance. But it's only Kratos that is faithfully serving his slave masters. But let's put a pin in that topic and move on to something that's a bit more controversial. Persephone's plan was to free Atlas and knock over the pillar that holds up the world. Kratos then asks her what will happen to herself, and this is what she said.
And what is to become of you?
I will have my peace and be free from this miserable existence. I will perish, but it is my choice.
Persephone would rather die than live her life as a slave. This is the total opposite of Kratos. Kratos said earlier he grows tired of the gods' demands, but Kratos, unlike Persephone, is willfully serving them. This actively makes Kratos the villain of the story. Even if the pillar falls and the whole world is completely wiped out, at least Kratos would be free. In God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, we straight up see what Kratos' thought process is, and he wishes he let them win. So I ask you, is Persephone the hero of this story? In one quick move, she could destroy the gods that have caused so much pain on herself and others. Well, I won't go as far as to call her a hero, because if Olympus falls, millions of people will die. It is, in fact, a selfish desire for Persephone to follow through with this. Yes, the gods will be destroyed, but so will innocent civilians and souls, including Calliope and all the spirits in the afterlife. So I say no one here is the villain. No one here is the hero. All four of these characters are victims to the gods who are essentially their slave masters. Persephone and Kratos should be on the same side. Kratos should let her destroy the world because both of them have been betrayed and abused by the gods, forced to do the gods' bidding, and this is something that Kratos does struggle with, but ultimately chooses to serve them. Now, I don't want to cheat, but I truly want you to understand the mindset of Kratos at this point in the story, and that context exists in God of War Ragnarok.
Brother, a choice you were given? To stay in Elysium with your daughter only to perish? Sounds like no choice at all.
Of course it was a choice. One I wished many times I made differently.
How so?
When I left Greece, Calliope was never far from my mind. I do not know how much time we would have had together in Elysium, but I would have traded the decades that followed for mere hours with her. It took meeting Faye for that feeling to go away, along with Calliope's song, but I do still think of her in Elysium.
Kratos wishes that he would have let Persephone win, and I think that's a really telling way to describe his mindset during Chains of Olympus. Think about Kratos' motivation at this point in his life. He just wants to get rid of his memories so he wouldn't have to remember what he did to his wife and his daughter. But now his daughter, his past that he's trying so hard to forget, is staring right at him. In order for Kratos to save the world, he has to destroy and kill spirits in front of her, once again reliving that memory that he's trying so hard to get rid of. Kratos in this game may seem, this very stoic person, but in fact his mind was in complete turmoil. The way he talks to Persephone after he loses his powers and his strength is somewhat different than how he used to talk. He talks in a very soft manner, and it almost sounds like he has concern for Persephone as a person. And when Calliope tries to hug him to get him to stop killing spirits in front of her, Kratos has to push her away. Kratos is not okay in this scene. He has to give up the one thing in the world he loves the most, his own daughter. Kratos and Persephone, due to how much they suffered at the hands of their slave masters, should be working together. Instead, they fight to the death. Persephone wants to break free, while Kratos wants to stay in chains. Chains of Olympus. That's why the title is what it is. The title Chains of Olympus is specifically about Kratos and Persephone, the ones who are bound to their slave masters who live on Olympus. I think that is something nobody has ever really made that connection, why the game is titled the way it is. In fact, it's not even Kratos and Persephone. Atlas and Calliope are chained to the underworld, again, because of Zeus, because of Kratos, the gods that pretty much destroy everything. truly believe that Chains of Olympus is one of the most underrated God of War games out there. It deserves to have analysis videos about it. It deserves to have more attention because its storytelling is on another level. By the way that they portray these characters and portray the story, it is not surface level. You really have to think of it. Why is a game called Chains of Olympus? All the similarities between these four characters are all put together in this one story, and it's put in a very beautiful way that's not exactly obvious. But for the last thing I want to talk about for this video is a connection between Kratos and Atlas. Kratos and Atlas obviously fought, and Kratos chained Atlas so he has to hold up the entire world in place of the pillar. This is the acceptance part of the game, and I think it is truly sad. Kratos and Atlas are talking as if they're talking out their issues. Atlas asks Kratos, why does he continue to serve the gods? And Kratos gave a very depressing answer.
Perhaps you believe the Olympians will help you. But I ask, where are your gods now, Kratos? Why do they not come to your aid? I do not need the aid of the gods! But my path is now clear to me. I will serve them, and they will keep their promise to free me from my past! I ask you, Spartan, what good is the promise of an Olympian? It is all I have, Atlas!
Thank you. Atlas clearly recognizes that the gods are treating Kratos badly, that they're not going to keep their promise. But Kratos at this point in the story is so desperate. He's so backed in a corner because he wants his memories erased so bad that he actively understands, and we've seen it throughout the story, Kratos is frustrated with the gods that they don't give him what he wants. But Kratos is still saying, I will serve them and they will keep their promise to free me from my past. And I think this is crazy storytelling because we know the gods never keep their promise until, I believe, God of War Ghost of Sparta, where Athena puts her hands to Kratos' head, and it seems like that she is about to finally get rid of Kratos' memories. But the only reason she's doing that at that point in the story is because Kratos is so enraged about what happened to Deimos and his mother, and he realizes what the gods truly are, his enemies. And that's when Athena wants to erase his memories. That's when they want to give him, you know, clarity and give him what he'd been asking for so long, and Kratos completely rejects it because he's just so mad and he knows what he has to do. And in this scene in Chains of Olympus, he's saying they will keep their promise to free me from my past. Kratos truly believes this, and it's a very awesome contrast between who he is at this point in the story. He is a pawn, and he's accepting that he is a pawn, and he has hope that the gods will give him what he wants. But we know as an audience, he will never get what he wants. He will always be a slave to the gods for as long as they deem it, and it seems like it will be forever because he's been doing this shit for a very long time at this point. And I think that storytelling is truly on another level, especially for a game that came out on the PSP. But that is all I have to say. I know this was a rather long video, but there was a lot to go over. What do you think about my thoughts? Should I make these type of videos shorter? You know, I go into a lot of detail, and I go into like these rants that's completely off script, and let me know if I should change it up. I'm gonna be out of here. Thank you guys and girls for listening. Deuces.